Hello class, we're now going to start our section on subsistence strategies, which is really a fancy way of saying how we make a living, how we subsist, how we survive. This Gen Talk is going to focus on making a living or subsistence strategies. It's the first part of 7, and it really is the overview of how making a living shapes societies and really has an impact on who we are culturally and our roles and statuses within societies. So, subsistence strategies, of course, refers to how we make a living. There are multiple subsistence strategy types. Hunters and gatherers were the earliest type. Then we evolved into either horticulturalists or pastoralists. Then societies evolved to becoming agriculturalists, or we were agrarians, and then feudalists. Then we shifted to industrial society types, and now post-industrial for many of us, including the United States. So there are really 6 subsistence strategy types: hunting and gathering, horticulturalist, pastoralism, and 2 and 3 existed at the same time and emerged out of hunting and gathering. Agrarian or agricultural and feudalist, also really a part of the same subsistence type. Industrialists, and then post-industrialists. There are 8 key features of each subsistence type, and they're really the hallmark elements of the societal impacts that these subsistence types have that we're going to talk about as we go through each of these types. When we understand how we make a living, we can understand societal structure and societal interaction. So actually, the way that you produce your food has an impact on how your society is structured. First, there's subsistence activity, how we actually make a living. For each of the 6, we'll talk about those hows. Second, we'll talk about population size. Different subsistence types allow for different population sizes. Some allow for small population sizes, and others have allowed us to grow and become very large. And of course, there are pros and cons to either. Life chances, which is another way of referring to access to necessary resources and methods of obtaining food, shelter, and perceived necessities. Each subsistence strategy, with it comes different life chances or greater or lesser access as members of society to the necessities within society. And of course, some geographic characteristics affect making a living and access to resources like mountains, winter, summer, being in a tropical region, being in a desert, etc. The 4th key feature that we'll talk about with each of the subsistence types are the tools or technologies that were used or that developed within that type that allowed us to evolve into that type and even to evolve beyond that type. The division of labor is critical. How is labor divided among the members of society? Is it divided by gender? Is it divided by age? Are there other ways in which the labor or the activities that we do to make a living are divided among society members? Those play a key role in how our societies are structured and the roles and the roles and the statuses that we have within those societies. The quality of life, surplus, and extras or lack thereof within a society are all key features of each of these types. With some subsistence types, the quality of life is very good, depending on how you define very good. And there are, in some cases, a lot of surplus resources, and in other cases, very few, and they're really living hand to mouth. Also, in terms of quality of life, in these subsistence types, we'll talk about who has control over the resources. The 7th key feature that we'll talk about is territorialism and land ownership, and the notion of currency, which came out of this concept of owning territory or owning land. Finally, interpersonal relationships, marriage and family linkages, and how these ways that we subsist or make a living impact whether or not marriage exists, or the important, in terms of the way the society defines it, relationships within a society, and also how these subsistence types control procreation. I'm looking forward to this conversation with all of you in the next few chapters.